short while ago, saying that this was going to continue the police action until the square is cleared.
Yeah, I mean, not only the mayor but also the governor, both of them use the similar attitude, but they're not alone. I mean, it starts with the prime minister, of course. There are some actually moderate voices, even in the government, like the deputy prime minister Bülent Arınç, but also in state structure like the president Abdullah Gül. But unfortunately, the prime minister, didn't share their often the approach and the way of dialogue with the protesters, even though people are ready for a consensus and to solve this issue with finding a common way. But it seems, the problem seems to be that the prime minister doesn't want to negotiate even for the park or for any of those projects that he wants to build up to the Taksim Square. That seems to be the sole problem, that the prime minister doesn't want sort of a dialogue or a consensus with these protesters.
All right, Utku Karakoza, we're going to put that question right now to the Prime Minister's chief advisor. Ibrahim Kalin joins us on the phone right now. Mr. Kalin, thank you very much for joining me. Do you think the Prime Minister will have these talks that he has called for and has agreed to? And will there be any meaningful result from them?
Yes, the Prime Minister is planning to have this meeting tomorrow with representatives of the peaceful protesters. And in fact, it's an important step on the part of the government after days of protest attacks, on public buildings, private property, police, etc. And the tomorrow meeting, in fact, is an indication and confirmation of the fact that the government has made a clear distinction between peaceful protesters and troublemakers from the very beginning.
Right. I know that you've been saying that, but let me ask you this. The government also said that no police would go into Gezi Park, and they did, and they fired tear gas. And how are the people meant to trust the words from the government?
Well, a little bit of clarification there. Actually, the police did not go in, as far as I know, did not go into the Gezi Park. In fact, I'm looking at the pictures that you're showing. That's mostly from the Gezi Park area. People are allowed and free to go around the Gezi Park. They cleaned up the Taksim Square. There are two places there. They're close to each other. The morning interception was meant to clear up the square, not the Gezi Park. That was announced, and that, as far as I know, that has been the case since this morning.
All right, can you be clear then? Are the protesters allowed to stay in Gezi Park? Because our reporter there, Alwa Damon, basically was there when tear gas was being fired into the park.
No, the protesters are there. In fact, the governor and the mayor have also announced it. The protesters are in Gezi Park at the moment.
And they're allowed to stay?
Yeah, they're allowed to stay. The police, as I said, intervened in the morning to clean up the Taksim Square. Because as you have seen, or maybe your viewers may not know these groups, these are mostly very marginal, some of which very illegal groups that have tried to dominate the scene and occupy the Taksim Square. And if you had a chance to look at some of their placards and their banners, etc., you very clearly see the type of message they are giving. It's not the peaceful protesters anymore. It's this other second group which the government has distinguished from the first group.
I know we've heard many people like yourself, government officials and members of parliament and certainly members of the Prime Minister's party, make this distinction and calling certain protesters radicals and extremists and terrorists. There are many questions about why you're saying that and what do you exactly mean. Who are these people that you call terrorists? Why do you not accept that they're part of a broader and expanding protest movement?
Well, it's very clear. This is not any different from the methods that were used, say, in the UK to disperse the crowds. In fact, today in London, a group of protesters tried to storm the buildings of the G8 summit in London, and the London police had to intervene to distinguish those from peaceful protesters. In fact, the same thing happened in the Occupy Wall Street events. The same thing happened in Greece, in Spain, most recently in Sweden. the police obviously have the mandate to establish public order. And peaceful protesters have been allowed to have their own demonstrations in the Gezi Park, but others have, as we have seen this morning, attacked the police with Molotov cocktails, with sticks, with whatever they can get. And they're obviously not the peaceful protesters. So that's why we're making this distinction. That's why the Prime Minister has reached out to these people to have a dialogue about the Gezi Park project, about their concerns, about many other issues. You have to make this distinction to have a meaningful dialogue. Obviously, some of these marginal groups that have been attacking the police, public buildings, etc., they are, I mean, anywhere in the world, they will not be considered peaceful protesters.
So, Mr. Kalin, what is the government, what is the Prime Minister ready to give in his talks tomorrow, as you say, still plan to go ahead with these protesters? They've made several demands. What is the Prime Minister willing to give?
Well, of course, the message is very clear that he's willing to have this dialogue. He's listening. He's going to listen to these people. And, of course, I cannot predict the contents of the discussion tomorrow, but his message, as he's been saying over the last 2 days, that he's willing to have this dialogue with the peaceful protesters as long as their demands are democratic. You know, calling a government to resign is not sufficient by itself for a government to go, obviously. This is an elected government. People have been talking about the government having an authoritarian streak, the Prime Minister becoming almost a dictator. You know, that kind of accusation is completely false, baseless. The Turkey has internationally recognized elections. The most recent election was held in 2011. The Prime Minister was elected with 50% of the vote. But the picture people are trying to, and some of the media, I have to say, are trying to depict is as if you have a dictatorship in Turkey, as if all life has come to a halt. In fact, what you are showing in your screen is only a very, very small part of Istanbul.
Well, we are getting as wide a view as possible, and that's why we're very grateful to be talking to you. Let me ask you, will the Prime Minister agree not to, raise Gezi Park? Will he agree not to do this mall? And also I need to ask you about the alcohol issue, because that does worry a lot of Turkey's young secular people who are used to being able to have a beer in Taksim Square. Why has this measure been passed? People are worried about a creeping theocracy. I'm going to say it like that.
Well, Christian, again, I mean, I think this is really an expression of a great confusion about some of the measures that government has taken in recent years about, say, alcohol regulation. The alcohol regulation that was passed and that was approved yesterday by the president, in fact, brings exactly the same international standards that you have anywhere in the world, whether you go to the UK or Germany or the United States. It's not any different. It's the same global standards that the World Health Organization has instituted for the purchase and use of alcohol. It's not any different. When you have the same regulation, say, in the UK, it's considered to be protecting the public from consumption of alcohol. When you have the same thing in Turkey, it is suddenly theocracy. It is suddenly authoritarianism. I'm having a hard time to understand this argument. In regards to some of these protesters, I have to mention this. Some of these people